Hello, and welcome to the fifth episode of the PharmD Diaries. I'm Angelica, and this is part 2 of our 3-part journey through pharmacy student organizations. If you missed the last episode, I encourage you to go listen to it, but we went over some of the different professional pharmacy organizations and the opportunities they can provide for students while in school and even after graduation. We also had an amazing special guest come and talk about pharmacy policy and advocacy and how it's still relevant today. So please go check that out. In today's episode, we're going to venture more into organizations that are dedicated to fostering leadership, academic excellence, and professional growth. Among these are pharmacy honor societies and professional fraternities. We have a great lineup of guests that my co-hosts Matthew, Alexis, and I got to interview. So first up are the pharmacy honor societies. We currently have 2 organizations on campus that are meant to recognize and promote excellence in the field of pharmacy. These societies typically have specific criteria for membership, such as academic achievement, leadership qualities, and involvement in pharmacy-related activities. Our school has Rho Chi and Phi Lambda Sigma. Rho Chi was created to recognize and elevate academic achievement within the field of pharmacy. Selection criteria is typically reserved for students who have maintained a high GPA, and its members are offered a myriad of opportunities for professional development, networking, and recognition. Whether through research grants, leadership workshops, or community outreach programs, Rho Chi empowers its members to make a meaningful difference in the field of pharmacy. The other organization is Phi Lambda Sigma, or PLS for short, which is a national pharmacy honor society whose mission is to promote the development of leadership qualities among pharmacy students and professionals. At its core, PLS seeks to recognize individuals who have demonstrated exceptional leadership abilities. Whether it's through academic achievements, professional endeavors, or community outreach, PLS celebrates those who go above and beyond in their leadership roles, and one of its hallmarks is the commitment to collaboration and networking within the pharmacy community by bringing together students, faculty, and practitioners to create opportunities for mentorship, knowledge sharing, and collective action. Next up is fraternities. Professional pharmacy fraternities are meant to help students succeed academically, professionally, and personally. They often provide mentorship programs, leadership development opportunities, community service initiatives, and access to workshops and conferences. Some well-known pharmacy fraternities, known nationally and globally, are Alpha Zeta Omega, Lambda Kappa Sigma, Kappa Epsilon, Kappa Psi, Phi Delta Chi, and Rho Pi Phi. Our school has Kappa Psi and Phi Delta Chi. So now I'm going to turn it over to Matthew and Alexis to introduce a couple of our special guests for the episode.
Hey y'all, Matthew here, and I'm joined by friend and fellow P3 Juhwan Kim. On our campus, Juhwan currently serves as regent of the Kappa Psi Pharmaceutical Fraternity. Today, I'll be asking Juhwan a few questions about the groups he leads as we continue our discussion on professional pharmacy organizations. Juhwan, welcome to the show.
Hey, Matthew. Thanks for having me here. It's great to be here.
So go ahead and explain to the audience what the regent really means and what Kappa Psi is exactly.
Yeah, so regarding Kappa Psi, it's one of 2 social/professional fraternities that are on campus, apart from, of course, Phi Delta Chi. We are a professional fraternity, so I know there's a lot of misunderstanding about the fact that, hey, we're talking about fraternities. This is probably just a bunch of bros that are going around drinking, having parties. But I do want to emphasize that we are a professional organization, and we do like to emphasize a lot in regards to promoting professionalism and the ideologies that follow kind of the profession of pharmacy. With that being said, my position as regent is effectively the official title that Kappa Psi holds for the president. So I don't want anyone getting confused. Me being referred to as regent of Kappa Psi does simply mean that I am the president of Kappa Psi.
What inspired you to join this fraternity?
So interesting story. I honestly did not think I would join any fraternity, to be completely honest, when I came to pharmacy school as a P1. I definitely had not been a part of a fraternity before in undergrad, but after going out to the rush and recruitment events, I think that's when I really got to understand the benefits of having that close-knit group of peers. And in honesty, like after joining, it really did help me realize that this is like my second family away from my family. And through these various rush events, I really got to feel welcomed by the upper class brothers. And it just overall made me feel like I wanted to become a part of that, to really have that family throughout pharmacy school, because obviously pharmacy school is stressful. There's a lot of challenges. And just having these people to help kind of guide my way through, I thought was just an amazing feeling.
What is the mission of the fraternity?
So while I can't go into all the details regarding the fraternity itself, that's for you to join and figure out, our mission is to ultimately promote fellowship across the brothers, involving ourselves in the advancement of the profession of pharmacy, and to overall have pride in being a Kappa Psi brother, as well as in the profession of pharmacy itself as well.
So you've brought up earlier how it helped you feel like more at home and closer to people when you started going to more of these events within the fraternity. Can you tell the audience what other opportunities are available?
Yeah, of course. So, as far as opportunities within the fraternity, Kappa Psi, of course, offers a number of different leadership opportunities through the various positions that are made available. We have a number of different committees that are focused on things like philanthropic events, of course, your service events. We focus on scholastic events and as well as just social and athletic events as well. So, being a part of the fraternity, it's allowed me to, like I said, have that bonding experience with my fellow brothers while going through just having fun through social or athletic events. Like we play pickleball, for example. And I know we have a zoo event planned later this month as well. So, that's going to be really fun. And it just gives another avenue for you to kind of have people that you know are going to be there for you and to be able to do things together with beyond just that of going to classes, going to conferences, although those are both definitely opportunities within the fraternity as well.
Can you share some of the highlights or maybe memorable experiences you've had as a brother of this fraternity?
Yeah, of course. I want everyone to be aware that Kappa Psi isn't, again, just something that you can find on our campus. Kappa Psi is actually the largest pharmaceutical fraternity across the United States. With that being said, I think for me, my biggest or most memorable experience would have to be our national conference. So we refer to it as the Grand Council Convention, where chapters from all across the United States get together. There's plenty of networking opportunities for people to present posters or research and see kind of like the more business aspects of the fraternity, whether it be through legislation or whatnot. Now, with that being said, I do still want to emphasize again that we're a professional fraternity, but we are still a fraternity. And there's a lot of fun and where we do act more like a fraternity. And it's really cool how I got to go out with a lot of practicing pharmacists. And these are people in higher positions within pharmacy. And just to be able to go out, have dinner with them, have some fun, I think that was, I guess, the most interesting thing. Like, I was not expecting that out of all these pharmacists.
For our last question regarding Kappa Psi, what advice would you give to someone maybe considering joining the fraternity or just kind of joining a professional organization in general?
Honestly, whether you really think you want to join a fraternity or not, my biggest advice would be to just come to the recruitment events. I know pharmacy school can be very stressful. You're always going to be like, hey, I don't have time to go out to these things. I need to study. But taking some time out of the day to just relax, have fun, get some tasty food, and really get to know the brothers is the best way to really see if you would fit in or if it's the right thing for you. Go to the recruitment events for both fraternities because you really don't know who you're going to actually really have that best interaction with until you try. So, with that being said, while you can only be a part of PDC or Kappa Psi, that doesn't restrict you from becoming a part of PLS and Rho Chi. So, I'm going to make a little connect from way back, but keep that open mind. But with regards to PDC and Kappa Psi specifically, like I said, just have an open mind, go to the recruitment events, and really just get to know the brothers because that's how you're going to know whether or not you're really going to enjoy your time within the fraternity. But at the end of the day, both fraternities are great. It's just a matter of where you think you best belong.
I love that response. Well, that's all the questions I have for you today. Thank you for being here and spending some time with us.
Hey, of course. Thanks again for having me.
Hey guys, it's Alexis, and today I'm joined with Chris, who is the president or the WCC of PDC at our school's chapter. So, welcome, Chris.
Thank you for having me.
For sure. So, can you tell us what is PDC all about and why did you join PDC?
So PDC is Phi Delta Chi. It's a Greek letter professional pharmacy fraternity. And I really want to emphasize that it's a professional pharmacy fraternity. So from where you have your undergrad with all of your different fraternities, sororities, everything like that. Once you go into pharmacy school, depending on what school you go to, our school is University of North Texas Health Science Center. We have two different fraternities that both of them are co-ed. I'm the president of PDC, and what we really value is just obviously brotherhood, leadership, and scholarship. And we really value just being able to be connected with each other, being able to just really meet you where you are. We accept everybody, all races, creed, ethnicity, like disability status, anything like that. Like we take any and everybody at our campus. We want to build you up so you can be just the best brother you can, the best pharmacist, and generally the best leader. And that's what really kind of made me really interested in joining a fraternity is because of my big, who was on one of the recent episodes, Sheedy. He really was able to just inspire me, and a lot of his values aligned up with mine. And then, and again, lined up with the fraternities and meeting with some of the people. We have some awesome people that done came before me, such as Tracy Presley, Haley McKeefer, Bree Palumbo. Like I can list go off just so many people. But really, I just enjoy just like a lot of the values, at least at Delta Beta and PDC as a whole, because I have been to some of the grand councils and just some national conferences, and really being able to just extend the brotherhood outside of the four walls from my campus is really just something I can't explain.
For sure. I mean, I can second that, not to be biased, but I'm part of PDC as well. And I second everything Chris says. I mean, it's an amazing fraternity, and I feel like we really do emphasize brotherhood. And I feel like if anything's going on in my life, I know that I have a lot of people that have my back or that I could turn to help me out in any situation. So it's just really nice to have. So you kind of touched on going to like Grand Council or more like national leadership conferences and things like that. So can you talk about how that is any different from things that we may do at our chapter?
You really get just a perspective of like you get to meet up, be put in a room with a bunch of strangers, but automatically you have some similarities to be like, I'm the type of person that wanted to identify with this org and they share those same values. And obviously through the process, we have some of these same experiences. So that's already easy talking points to help break the ice essentially. And also, we really be able to just get a deepened love for the fraternity aspect. So, like for me, that's where I almost had one of my rotations because I met one of my really great brother. His name is Kevin Anderson up north. He had a connection with somebody down here and would really be able to just really talk and network with everything like that. I even still get text messages to this day and LinkedIn messages from people I met at Grand Council and LDS of just like, oh, hey, how you doing? And it's like whenever it was match day, so many PDC brothers obviously popping up with, oh, congratulations, congratulations. And to give you just a short anecdotal story, I was at one of the SNAFA ACCP residency showcases online, and I was just in this random breakout room for this residency panel, just being able to listen to what they said. And one of the PDC brothers that was in my specific breakout group, like in my specific group, she was in there as well. Her name is Sophia, and she recently matched as well. So if you listen to Sophia, congratulations. But I was able to contact with her, and it just like it really just made me decompress. Like, okay, I'm not just here by myself, and so that's what really, in terms of like the brotherhood, being able to just have presence. And it's like if I was to go into different interviews or go into different spaces, and just knowing that I'm affiliated with this organization, they see that I'm affiliated with this organization, it's already a connection just already starting to happen. And it's all about first impressions. And generally, whenever a PDC brother meet another brother, it's an automatic good first impression.
I feel like I surprisingly am more shy around people I don't know. So already having that common denominator that like, oh, we both share these values, we're both part of PDC helps break the ice a little better when you're getting to know other people. You kind of touched on this with saying that you met someone who was your preceptor, but what are some opportunities that are available within PDC for people who may be thinking of joining PDC or who are already in, just shedding light on all the things that we offer?
For sure. So talking about the outside perspective, some of the opportunity you can gain once you become a brother of the fraternity is first one, obviously, a lot of leadership experiences. I wouldn't be on this podcast. I wouldn't be where I'm at now without all of the leadership opportunity within PDC. And then from that, it can just explode with so many different other opportunities, such as research opportunities. This is my first time speaking on a podcast, but I got to help out with development of another podcast at our school named Farm 5 with one of our advisors at our faculty. So you have a lot of different research opportunities. you have a lot of different opportunity to put on different projects and events. Like we have a lot of recruitment events. And for one of our events called Murder Mystery, which one of the lovely founders of this podcast, Angelica, she put a handwritten script herself. But that event easily had 100 people. So then you can be able to have different interview style questions where you go and say, hey, tell me about a time you organized a big project. Oh, let me tell you about murder mystery. And it just like being able to just have a lot of different good, cool stories, opportunities. Like you get access to a lot of different, obviously, leadership opportunities and everything like that. But even besides that, you get access to a lot of the upperclassmen, a lot of the brothers that came ahead of you to be able to just help you out. Like, say, whenever I had a hard time during cardiorenal with heart failure, I was able to reach out to my big cheater and any of the other brothers, and they'll be able to help guide you. Okay, so these are the steps, therapy, these some analogies. You can be able to think about it, and it'd be like, okay, good. Because a lot of times you're already in these same spaces with these upperclassmen and with your brothers. So you might as well just ask, and they're going to be able to help you out because they know what position you was. And because y'all just have such similarities and like y'all always have like that bond that you don't normally have with other people, it's really going to serve you well. And then for brothers who already listening to the podcast, you have just a leadership ladder that you can be able to keep climbing up, whether that regional opportunities, grand officer opportunities, opportunities for different committee chairs. And there's so many different options. And it's like PDC also gave you access to a lot of different other things. One of the things is for those, because the podcast is on the internet, a lot of people may not live in the state of Texas. And so if you say, if I want to do a residency out in Washington, whenever I talk with Kevin, I can be able to say, oh, hey, do you mind if I crash on your couch for 6 months while I do my residency so I don't got to pay $2,000 for rent for 6 months? Or even just like they have an actual marketplace to be able to get different places to live, residency help, everything like that. Because that's another thing. It's another guy. His name is Jerry. He offers so many like motivational talks, speaking points, residency prep, interview prep, so many different other opportunities. Like literally, I could probably have an hour podcast on this episode just talking about the different opportunities in PDC. If you're looking for leadership opportunity, developing yourself, and just unforgettable memories, you need to join PDC.
Can you share some highlights or memorable experiences that you've had as a member of the fraternity? So, both as a brother and maybe any highlights or memorable things that you've had being in the position of WCC this year.
Talk about some of the highlights. I'm gonna try to give different example than what I gave earlier from Grand Council or anything like that. But really being able to cherish the small moments, like everybody in my candidate class, because we had 28 people. But whenever we did our social project and we was at a place called Taco Head, and being able to get there, have some margaritas, some games, we had different charades and all of just the yelling and the fussing at each other, just hooting, hollering, having a good time. That was like one of my highlights. Another highlights is outside of our meeting, just being able to just congregate amongst ourselves outside of school, outside of all the different stressors in life, and being able to just sit there and just joke and just talk about random stuff, whether that basketball, football, anything like that. Being able to just talk amongst your brothers outside of our meeting is really good. And then talk about some of the different highlights I've had just as the president, it really being able to sit back and see how I had a vision for the fraternity at the beginning of the year and really being able to see that come forward fruition. Like one of the things, and I done had some people came up and talk to me, is like I wanted at least my fraternity, whenever I was in charge of it, to be a lot more just relaxed, easygoing, a place where people want companionship, people who can feel like their voices are heard, that they can be able to just be their authentic self. And I feel like I done really created that just environment for our fraternity and really being able to sit back sometimes and just watch it to where it's like, at the end of the day, I know I'm not PDC. I may be a part of it, but I'm not the whole thing. So being able to just basically X myself out of it and being able to be a spectator at times and just seeing the different things I done develop, whether that procedural stuff, different events happening, everything like that, just the overall setting, the different tone in the environments, and just seeing the innovators that's coming up, seeing all the creative ideas, seeing just the participation of people want to say, hey, I want to do this, to be able to just go from at the beginning of the semester, they may be the quiet person, but now that they done been through candidacy, everything like that, everybody they're being involved and active participants, saying their pieces and everything like that. That's really just been my overall enjoyment just as a president of just being able to see my vision, executing it, and just not necessarily me reaping the benefits, been able to see the fraternity reaping those benefits of all the different seeds that I done sold into it.
Okay, so for one of my last questions, it's kind of just a general one, and you can answer it for PDC or just any frat in general, since some other campuses may not have PDC, or other listeners may be wanting to know about other org and fraternities as well. But what advice would you give to someone who's considering on joining a fraternity?
I would say the number one advice is if after your school, if I don't got a PDC chapter, be that leadership person and go ahead and make it yourself. I'm just kidding. I know that's a lot of
Amen.
words. But just some general advice is I know I'm saying a lot of good and great things, but I want y'all to understand that this is the Delta Beta chapter here at my school. Every chapter is going to be different. Well, I want each and every one of you who's given the time to be able to listen to just this person talk on this podcast is to see who do you vibe with, who do you really just link with. Basically, go to wherever group that has a natural affinity for you. So, like, who's to say that on a different campus, Kappa Psi might be your cup of tea? That's fine. I also want to say, don't be afraid to just be that lone wolf in your friend group. I would say for me, I have a friend group of about 5 people. 4 of us went PDC, one of them went Kappa Psi. We're all good. We always do just some playful bashing with each other. Well, obviously with a different fraternity, but we're still able to be really good friends. And it's like I feel like even though like we made different decisions, I feel like within that difference, we had a lot of personal development and just our connection was able to grow even deeper in a different way because we respected each other different decisions, didn't have kind of peer pressure on each other, and that we was able to allow each other to grow and flourish in our own different ways. And so I would say if you're considering joining the fraternity, just still go to all the recruitment events more times than not. A lot of times it's free food, good vibes, and who say no to free food? Just still go to it. Just have fun. Even if you go through all the different events and you're like, hey, with my upcoming school year, that'll be too much for me. That's more than okay. Because at the end of the day, speaking from a leadership position, if I buy 100 hot dogs, I'm not going to go home with 40. I would rather somebody come eat up these hot dogs and then just never say anything else than having to figure out what to do with the extra food or anything like that. So still come out to all the events, get outside your comfort zone, talk to these people because even if you don't go to that fraternity, you still developing a really great connection. And it's like a lot of these connections and the whole idea behind fraternity, organizations, everything like that, is to build connection that will serve you for the future. And so that would be the really biggest thing is get out there, get outside your comfort zone, get outside your even friend group, build relationships, build connections, and overall just try to be the person that you want in the future to be really proud of and that to just do yourself a favor by just talking to these people.
I agree. I feel like you kind of touched on this with the people that you've met, but I feel like as soon as I tell people like, oh, I'm PDC, no matter where I am, like on rotation or my new boss, she's PDC, so like that's already just a connection. Like Chris was saying, just see what best fits you, like what best suits you, how the vibes are. And I feel like for me, going through candidacy or like trying to decide if I wanted to do that, it seems like a lot because we do have recruitment events, but I feel like they're really good stress relievers and like ways to get your mind off of like school as well. So, like Chris said, even if you don't join, just come have some fun. Did you have anything else that you wanted to share?
If you had any general questions just about PDC, you can obviously look us up. We have a national website. You can find about us, whether that mission, vision statement, our philanthropy partners, or anything like that. Also, shameless plug for me. You can follow me on LinkedIn. I post a lot of my different updates. And just in general, what I want to tell you is don't let even me or anybody else define how you be successful and how you live your life. Wherever that may be, because you're going to get a lot of good advice, you're going to get a lot of bad advice. But I want everybody who's listening to this podcast to really just be the best version of themselves that they think they should be.
Alrighty, well, thank you so much, Chris, for taking the time to answer some of our questions. And hopefully, you guys learned a little bit more about PDC and why we're so great.
Boop, boop, Rush PDC.
As I mentioned earlier, PLS is an organization that recognizes leadership. While there are plenty of opportunities that allow students to get involved in various leadership roles, the main organization for leaders at our school is the Pharmacy Student Government Association, or PSGA. PSGA is a student-led organization in pharmacy schools that serves as the governing body representing students and their interests within the academic institution. PSGA typically works to foster communication with faculty and administration to advocate for the needs and concerns of pharmacy students. At our school, PSGA is separated into executive government and class government. Executive PSGA serves the College of Pharmacy as a whole. They work closely with student development, faculty, and the dean to ensure that our voice is heard from a student perspective. They also put on fun events for the college, such as the Back to School Bash and Pharmal. On the other hand, Class PSGA serves as representatives for each cohort to handle any internal issues that may arise within the class. They also act as liaisons between the classes and the faculty and staff to find ways to improve the program. In order to give you a better perspective on the roles and responsibilities of a PSGA officer, please welcome a UNT-HSC College of Pharmacy alum, Storee Yzaguirre.
Hello, thank you for having me. So my name is Storee. I am currently a first-year resident. I graduated this past year from the University of North Texas Health Science Center, and now I'm doing my first-year residency at Parkland Health in Dallas. And when I finish this in a couple months, I'm going to be going on to my second-year residency, specializing in internal medicine at West Virginia University Medicine. And the reason you kind of have me here today is I was former PSGA president back in my day in pharmacy school.
What motivated you to run for the position of PSGA president?
So I never really saw myself as being PSGA president. I was involved in PSGA from my P1 year, and I did it every year throughout pharmacy school. And my P1 and P2 year, I held the position that went to executive meetings. So I was kind of the liaison between my class board as well as the executive board. And even after doing that, I loved PSGA and I loved being with the executive board, but I never saw myself being president. Kind of saw myself as more of a vice president role there to kind of support the president and make sure everything was going smoothly and happening. And then as time came and it was time for elections prior to our P3 year, I was the only person in our class who had any experience working with exec. And so it kind of made sense that I did it, but I was still a little bit hesitant. And I kind of saw it as an opportunity to push me out of my comfort zone. I wasn't typically president of organizations in the past, even in like undergrad and prior to P3 year. So I saw it as a chance to push myself out there, get different experiences. And then I also just knew how much being PSGA president could offer, all of the networking I could do with it, all the opportunities that came with it. And so I kind of just went for it. Had a little push from some of my friends, but I knew that it would be a great experience. I knew I was going to have a wonderful advisor, Dr. George, alongside me to help. So we went for it. I had to give myself a little pep talk to do it, but I was glad I did.
What were your main responsibilities and duties as PSGA president?
So they varied a lot, but kind of core responsibilities was communication with all of our organizations. So over 20 organizations that we had throughout our pharmacy school. I would communicate with them on different things that were either coming from the dean's suite or if there were changes being made. I would have to hold a large meeting with every single organization president and VP at least once a semester. So communication with them. I also kind of stood as a liaison to programs outside of pharmacy within our school. And so a lot of people, when they were trying to get in contact with someone from pharmacy, whether they wanted to collaborate with us on something or they had a volunteer event, they would send that through me. And so sometimes it was things I completed. Sometimes I had to find the right person to send it off to. I also was there to kind of make sure we were following our bylaws within pharmacy and all the organizations were following bylaws. And then additionally, just kind of delegating tasks throughout the year. So whatever came to PSGA, if we were needing to delegate something to another organization that we had, doing that amongst all of the groups. So it was a lot of triaging in a way and figuring out the right person for it to go to. And then throughout the year, we had a lot of different big events. So earlier in the year, I would have a lot of responsibilities with Pharmacy Week. Later in the year, there would be a lot with elections or helping out with Pharmal. So things kind of came in waves and it varied a lot. But those are kind of the core ones that I had throughout the year.
Can you describe a typical week in your role as PSGA president?
Yeah, so that would also kind of vary a lot depending on what was going on. But overall, we would have executive meetings every other week. And so making sure that those were being held, we were staying on track with everything we were needing to complete. If we had any of those big events coming up that we were getting ready for, that was something that we would do continuously throughout the year. And I was also kind of requested a lot of times to be at additional meetings outside of pharmacy. For example, different accreditation meetings or things like that would be things that I would go and attend. I was also in very frequent communication with various people throughout the Dean's Suite. I think I was taking trips into the Dean's Suite several times a week. And so I was just kind of a common face for them to see. I was just there every day. So whether it was questions we had or things that we were trying to complete, always talking with them. And then, like I mentioned, if there were different things going on for pharmacy week, I had a lot of meetings with higher up people in our school, getting things scheduled, making sure everything was planned accordingly. A lot went on with elections. So again, depending on what was going on, but I was kind of the person that was there to represent our entire pharmacy school.
So, as you mentioned, you had a lot of different responsibilities, which varied depending on what tasks needed to be completed for the week. How are you able to balance being an officer and a student?
Everybody says time management is important and they're not lying. It sounds like a broken record, but time management you definitely learn throughout school and is something that is going to continue to be important even after pharmacy school. It doesn't just stop here. And whether you're going to a residency or a job, you're going to need it. So being able to balance my time and appropriately align my tasks was very important. And so I heavily relied on my calendar. If it wasn't on my calendar, it probably wasn't getting done. So I'm very much a color coded, have my calendar set out so I know what's coming up. And then it's also a lot of looking ahead at not only what am I doing right now. I think a lot of times in school, we're looking very short term, like what exam do I have this week and next week? And it's very easy to look at the short term things and put off the long term things. And so that's something that you have to know. Pharmacy week is 2 or 3 months from now, but I have to start prepping now because I have to get speakers and we have to get all of these things aligned. And so it's important to be very proactive. And so I had to make sure I'm big on, I will set reminders for myself to say, I need to be starting this at this time so that I know I'm on track and kind of keep a timeline for myself. Those were kind of ways that I was able to stay on track and balance being a student, being in extracurriculars, having a job. And then I also think on the other end, it's important to kind of know your limits and your boundaries. I think, especially with school, a lot of times I've noticed I did this myself where I would spend so much time working on the same thing. And at some point, you're not working as well as you could, like you're not at full capacity. And so I think it's also important to know I need to take a break. I need to go do something fun because I'm not being as efficient as I could be. And that's something people have a hard time with is thinking that you just have to sit there and keep working and working. So I think that's the other side of it to make sure that you have a good balance so that your kind of tank is juiced up and you're able to be your best self.
What are some of the biggest challenges you faced and how did you overcome them?
One of the biggest challenges right off the bat was when I became president of PSGA. It was our first year back from being home for COVID for about a year and a half. And so all of a sudden, everyone was back on campus, and almost the majority of the students had never been on campus. So it was definitely a curve for everyone. And so one of, I think, the hardest things that I had to overcome starting out as president was how do we kind of get things back on track, how they used to be? You know, everyone isn't used to this. Even the students that were P2s had never been on campus. And so getting things kind of back how they used to be. For example, elections. No one had done elections in person for years. And so that was something that I kind of had to get back rolling. And going back to, I was the only person on the campus at that point who had ever had any role within PSGA executive. And so making sure that we were getting that done was definitely a lot at first, but also adapting to this like new normal that we had with a hybrid environment. So those were things that I kind of had to be in communication with some of our professors on how we were going to do this new normal of school. And then kind of on the same note, but on a more fun side, I remember when I became president, I showed up and essentially our funds that we have expire at a certain time. So when I became president, we had leftover funds from the prior year that obviously didn't get used. Everybody was at home. We didn't have anything to spend money on. And those expired in, I think, a month after I became president. And it was a lot of money. Like I'm talking a lot of money. You could have gone on a crazy shopping spree. And that money came out of every student's tuition. And so if we didn't use it, we were going to lose it. And I was not about to let everybody's money that was paid in their tuition go to waste. And so within a month, we had to figure out how to spend over $10,000. It was a lot of fun, but we had to be very strategic. So that was something that kind of overcoming, figure out what are we going to do with all of this money. And so that was something that came about at the beginning of the year. And then just lastly was alongside that, getting things approved can be a lot of challenge with us having to report to people outside of pharmacy and not necessarily understanding what pharmacy is and what our school needs. And so having to learn to be flexible and creative with the way we requested things and how we phrased things and making sure that we showed what the importance was for our students.
How did you handle any conflicts or disagreements among students while maintaining professionalism and unity?
I think as the PSGA president, I kind of had to stand as a very non-biased figure and one that was there to represent our school and to also make sure that, everything was running on track. And so I do remember there being times when I would have to bring some people together to discuss whatever situation was going on. I do remember this happening at one point and kind of standing there, letting people discuss their thoughts and their views and what they perceived was going on and not necessarily figuring out who's right and who's wrong, but standing more as a mediator and discussing, okay, this is what everyone is thinking, everyone is seeing, how are we going to move forward from here? Luckily, I didn't have to do too much of this, but when it did come up, I think the best thing is just being non-biased and knowing that when you're standing there as the president, that you aren't going to take sides or take favorites and make decisions based on what you want or what your friends want.
Were there any significant accomplishments or initiatives that you spearheaded or were involved in during your term that you're really proud of?
Yeah, well, first of all, a lot of my year, like I said, was getting everything back on track from how it was. But we, on top of that, were able to do some really cool stuff that year. One thing was the pharmacy wellness room, kind of dedicated to the pharmacy school. It was something that we'd always wanted since our first year when we got kicked out of another program's room when they wouldn't let us use their ping pong table. So we had always wanted our own room for pharmacy students to be able to go and relax and decompress. So a little bit earlier in my term, I was able to get the bylaws changed to include the class activity chairs in the mental wellness work group to kind of help with that. And then alongside that, I worked with several of my students within my class with one of our professors, Dr. Torres, to kind of get this wellness room established. And so throughout the year, we had trial wellness rooms. We had a research project we were doing on it. So a lot of those things that we were able to incorporate PSGA into. And we were finally able to get a room. Unfortunately, it wasn't while I was there, but I'm glad that we were able to get it for the other students. So that was one really cool thing we did. And then the second I would say is what I mentioned earlier about having to spend all of that money when we got there and finding something purposeful to put it towards. And with us just coming back from COVID and nobody even knowing each other hardly and just being back on campus for the first time is when we decided to plan a back to school bash. And that was the first time we'd ever done that. We had food trucks and we had snow cone trucks and we had giveaways with things that everybody could use for school and NAPLEX prep books that we were giving out. So that was a super, super fun event. And I think was a great way for us to utilize our funds. And that was something that ended up being carried on for several years after. I don't know if y'all were able to do it this year or not, but I know for at least several years after me, that continued to kind of be a tradition.
Yes, we still do that today. So that's really cool that you
That's
started this tradition.
That is awesome. Yeah, we were like, why do we do this? And then we were like, let's just throw a big party. It was so fun. It was so worth it.
So now that you are in residency, was there any part of your experience in PSGA that you felt helps you prepare for residency or just professional growth in general?
Yeah, one thing that I mentioned earlier was kind of balancing your tasks, of course, is very helpful to prepare you for whatever you go forward to, but especially in residency when you have an endless number of obligations and tasks to do, especially what I mentioned about long-term projects. Once you get into residency, there's a lot more longitudinal things going on. You're doing projects that are occurring throughout the entire year, or they aren't due until April, but you have to get started on those ahead of time. And so, like I mentioned with PSGA, kind of setting a timeline for yourself and being prepared for those so that they don't pile up towards the end was definitely a big thing. I also think learning to triage was really good. I would be sent, like I mentioned, a ton of emails and a ton of things I needed to do that could not all be done at once. And, it's easy to want to jump on the quick things and do the really fast things and get them out of the way. But a lot of times you have to really be intentional and prioritize what you're doing and triage what can be done now, what absolutely needs to be done now, and then what can I save later. And that's something that helps you kind of utilize your time wisely, which in residency you will do when you're working at patients, what problems are most important. It kind of helps you across the board. And then lastly, I would just say networking was a big thing. Like I mentioned, was in the Dean Suite almost every single day. And so I was able to build really solid relationships with a lot of people that were higher up and that were in these bigger positions. And that was one of the most valuable things that I was able to take out of PSGA. And so I still have a lot of those connections now. And even when I posted on my LinkedIn that I matched for my PGY2, our former dean commented on it and congratulated me and mentioned that he had been at West Virginia for years. And so had I not been in PSGA, he might not even know my name. And so having those connections that you will have forever, everyone says pharmacy is a small world. It's so true. So that's another super beneficial thing that I was able to take from PSGA.
Looking back, what advice would you give to someone who is considering running for president or just any position in PSGA?
I would definitely say to reach out and get in contact with the person that has that position right now or who has had that position in the past. I think a lot of times you don't fully know what a position entails. There's a lot of behind the scenes work. So I think it's important to know what you're getting yourself into and recognize if that is something you want to do. And then second, I think that if you have any interest at all, that you should go for it. I know a lot of people kind of hold back and talk themselves out of running for different positions because they don't think they're qualified or they don't think they'll be good at it. And I think as long as you are willing to put in the work to be the best that you can at that position, that you will be successful. And you have an entire board that works with you that's there to help you be successful. And so if you have any interest at all to push yourself out of your comfort zone, that's what school is for, to kind of help you prepare for later years and get experience doing different things. And then just knowing that going into it, one big thing that I had to learn as president was how to delegate tasks. I think especially pharmacists, where a lot of us were very type A, you want to do everything and you want to get everything done. But especially in a president role, a lot of being president is delegating and knowing which of your other co-officers can do these different tasks and knowing who the appropriate person to send these are to. And so you're not going to do everything. Also, people that kind of have a fear of running for president, knowing that you have a whole board to support you, you're not doing everything on your own is kind of a good mindset to have going into it.
Did you have any closing remarks before we go?
I would just like to say that I've mentioned getting out of your comfort zone. I just want to say I think it's really incredible that you and your friends have started this podcast. I bet that was definitely something out of your comfort zone. So I really commend y'all for that. And I think it's kind of a great stride for y'all putting yourself out there and getting experience doing different things, which, like I said, is what everyone is in school for, to learn and to grow. So I just want to thank you for having me on. This is great. And y'all are doing an incredible job.
Thank you so much, Storee. And that's a wrap for today's episode. A big thank you to Juhwan Kim, Kristopher Ingram, and Storee Yzaguirre for being guests on this episode. And thank you to our listeners for tuning in. If you enjoyed our journey through the pharmacy student experience, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and leave a review. Your support means the world to us. If you have any questions, topics you'd like us to cover, or if you want to share your own PharmD story, feel free to reach out via email at diariesfarmd@gmail.com. You can also find us on Instagram and Facebook at PharmD Diaries Podcast. Remember, you are not alone in this journey, so take care, study hard, and keep chasing your pharmacy dreams.
Bye.